Welcome, everybody. Happy Monday to all of you out there. Welcome to the Morning Update Show. I am your co-host, Trey Holiday. And you guys know we bring the news to you through a community views. We got a lot of great things to catch into today. You guys know I got to bring my guy, Big O, up here. What's up, Big O?
All right, Trey Holiday, happy Monday. Good to see you. Looking fresh today. I like your sweatshirt there. Chocolate, 100% melanin.
Yes. This is a Chaos Customs.
See, well, this is what I'm saying. I'm waiting for my clothing. I think most people know they're like, man, unless it's a Converge, I ain't gonna wear it. So if you want to make some custom Converge gear for us here on set, be happy to wear it. You know, we're always winning. Got earrings popping, everything.
Hey, we try to bring it in, man. Today is all about monochrome. So
all right, good show today, big show. You know, we were one of the people early on. The South Seattle Emerald actually talked about it back in September that Lance Randall was running for mayor, and I believe Lance very well might have been the very first person to register for mayor. We'll ask him. He's joining us here today. Talk about his mayoral campaign. Of course, the landscape has changed significantly from when Mr. Randall first filed back in, I think, September of last year. Of course, Mayor Durkin's not running for re-election. I think Moscata said that who a lot of people thought was going to be running for mayor. Moscata is not running for mayor. So it's going to be a real interesting landscape out there to see how it shapes up. But, you know, first up, we got Mr. Lance Randall, so it'll be real interesting to talk to him.
Absolutely. I know the public is so interested in finding out more about the next candidate. Like, what are we going to look into? Because there's a lot of promises being made to community. How is it going to shape up? So you're absolutely right, my friend.
So the promises being made, huh? All right, man. So much news. And it was like, I had to shut it down this weekend. Yeah,
good. You never do.
Yeah, I had to just shut it down. But some big news here. We're gonna go on the local front and then the national, and then back here on the local front, man. Around this riot there in DC, riot, insurrection, whatever, man. Anyways, first up, KUOW. Right here, Seattle Police Accountability Office investigating actions of officers in DC during Capitol building attack. So, yeah, OPA is looking into it. And actually, as soon as the Seattle Police Department, they put out a tweet. It was like 8:00 at night, but they put out a tweet, and people can read it there on the SPD's blotter on their website. The full statement released by Chief Diaz. But basically, there was at least two Seattle police officers that were there in Washington, D.C., and they're investigating it more. There's nothing saying that these people were inside the Capitol, which clearly would have been illegal because they were illegally inside the Capitol, or if they were there to protest. And if they were there protesting, that's freedom of speech. You know what I'm saying? People protest all the time, but it's being investigated in the OPA. And Director Meyerberg, as soon as the news broke, I emailed Director Meyerberg right away. And Director Meyerberg emailed me right back, like 4 minutes later from OPA. So we got good response time from OPA. And what the director said is, "Hi, Omari. OPA opened an intake into this matter today. We'll be investigating. At this point, we are aware of 2 current SPD employees are believed to have attended the protest in Washington, D.C. Wednesday. We do not yet know the extent of the participation and determining this as we proceed through the case, as well as identifying any other SPD, I think it says officers who might have been in attendance."
Yeah.
So
get on them. That's all I got to say. I mean, at the end of the day, if the fact that 2 of our Seattle police officers were present, I love the fact that OPA has gotten back to Converge so quickly. Thank you, Omari, for reaching out. I love that they did that. And also, too, this is, again, goes back to the accountability piece that we need more trust from the community and OPA. So them doing this in a swift way is actually the right way to go.
Right. And, like I said, OPA, they got back. And actually, to be honest with you, every time we reach out to OPA on something, they at least get back to us with a statement. So, we put that out on Friday, and, we'll be following up. I guess the whole city is going to be following up now to see what's going on with OPA around this. And again, someone attending because there was a rally that was at Olympia. And it was a rally where the president was speaking. And then there was the people who broke into the Capitol. And so I guess that's what OPA is investigating more. They're also going to investigate as to, did these people self-report that they were there, some other things. So we'll see how that rolls out. Something else interesting. So Mike Solon, the president of SPOG, people know Mike Solon, especially if you're watching this show. Mike Solon retweeted a tweet by Andy Go. And basically in the tweet, they were saying, implying that Black Lives Matter protesters were the true instigators of what occurred out there in Washington, D.C. And one of the thing is there's a guy, I'm forgetting his name right now, but it's in the tweet, who covers a lot of protests, and he covers a lot of BLM protests, and he was there, quasi-journalist, activist, or a guy from Utah. It's an interesting situation with him and his brother. One of them is on the right, one of them is on the left. Don't know if it's part of a ploy, but anyways, they trying to say that everything was sparked by these Black Lives Matter protesters and by Antifa and everything else. And so it'll be interesting because, we haven't seen any like Black Lives Matter protesters or Antifa people who the FBI is looking for on all that. But something did come out. You remember Scott Lindsay. People might remember Scott Lindsay. If for nothing else, you saw Scott Lindsay and Eric Johnson's fight for the soul of Seattle. He was one of the people who was talking there. But he also ran for city attorney, and he's had some other jobs, mostly in law enforcement here in the city of Seattle, and was also on, I believe, worked for Representative John Lewis. But anyway, Scott Lindsay says, as someone who has fought for police reform and defended the Seattle police against defunding, I have a duty to call out the head of their union when their union spreads misinformation about the Capitol attack. Mike Solon should apologize or resign. Seattle Police Department officers deserve better. And literally, former Chief Carmen Best jumped right on top of that tweet and said, wholly agree with Scott Lindsay, exclamation point. BLM was not the cause of yesterday's insurrection. We have to tell the truth. My friend, it's interesting times here in Seattle.
to see it, unfolding in this way in our city, man. I mean, again, I will agree that, what Scott Lindsay said with regard to like Mike Solon stepping down or resigning. I mean, there's been a lot of things, honestly, that Mike Solon has done that really brings into question, a lot of folks from the community, regular community members who just got a touch of who he was just right here on Converge, and people being like, whoa, like what's up with this guy? And after that, man, we've seen him do several different things that just seem distasteful, man. If nothing more, it's just distasteful.
Well, here's the thing is what people have to remember is that Mike Solon last year when they ran for the union president, Mike Solon didn't win by an inch. He won by a mile. Mike Solon got 70% of the vote of the police officers guild, of the rank and file officers. And even at the time when we had Mike Solon on the morning update show, it was like, well, 70% of the officers feel like Mike Solon. I mean, he's their president. He represents them. The 70% of Seattle police officers feel that BLM protesters were behind what we saw there in Washington, D.C., which actually now 2 officers, unfortunately, are now dead. One was killed there by these rioters, and the other one took his life. It was one of the officers who was guarding the Senate, assigned to the Senate office. He took his life. So now there's 2 officers, there's other people that are dead, there's all kinds of stuff going on. And I mean, I think that for us, for a lot of people, especially like Solon is real big. He talks about personal responsibility. He calls out the city council and says, especially Herbold. He's always on Herbold's head. Be responsible, be accountable. You said this and that. I mean, come on, man. You know what I'm saying? It seems like a big blame shift over here to just want to say that BLM is behind it. I think part of it is too, though, it's this bigger thing that we talk about that a lot of time white America don't want to take responsibility.
Period.
If they can shift something, why not shift it?
This is why I say when you just there, you said he's all about personal accountability, responsibility. You have to take responsibility when you actually say false falsehoods, when you spread lies. That has not been proven at all. What we all saw fold before our very eyes was what appeared to be Trump supporters or those who were trying to disrupt the democratic process by entering the Capitol and creating and committing a felony. It wasn't, again, we didn't see this. So to say that it was BLM protesters and Antifa, again, some accounts that are unfounded, you're just spewing your opinion out there. And I love how you call out, is this also the opinion of the 70% of officers that voted for him?
I bring this up because a few months ago, I think it was King 5 that interviewed Mike Solon down there at the SPLOG headquarters, and they asked him a question: "Are you worried about OPA?" Mike Solon was like, "I'm not worried about OPA." Does that mean 70% of SPD officers? Like, he won by a landslide. And Mike Solon, when he was running for office there against Stuckey, what his thing was is they were changing the narrative. You know what I'm saying? They were changing the narrative and everything else. And we've seen, you know, a shift, a very proactive shift in communications and everything over there at the Seattle Police Officers Guild. Mike Solon appears nationally on a lot of different shows and some of everything else. And he's consistently, you know, he's pushed the line, you know, on quite a few of these things here. But this isn't, Mike Solon's not alone. All across America, we find people who are like, well, this wasn't our people who could have done this. It had to be Antifa. It had to be BLM. It had to be, but FBI keep picking people up who, you know, it's their people.
Yes.
One guy was elected representative in the West Virginia state legislature. You've got, when this all comes out, people will see. Let me look right into the camera and tell you this. The problem is that a lot of people, especially people on the left, they sit here and think that Trumpers or people on the right are somewhere hillbillies or yada this or that or whatever. And so they have this concept, like the left sees people who are big time supporters as a stereotype. But in all actuality, they're your police, they're your firefighters, they're your doctor in the emergency room, they're your teacher, they're the judge, they're you know what I'm saying? They're your Uber driver. And I've been saying this before Election Day. And after Election Day, I said, Trey Holiday, it's very important that we have a conversation with our neighbors in this state who don't necessarily agree. Because I said, we live with these people, and it's important that we understand what other people are thinking. So where a lot of people were dismissive, hey, you guys lost or whatever, we've constantly been trying to communicate, because at the end of the day, and this is what people are going to realize as more of these arrest warrants come out, these are everyday people. You had a doctor out there, a doctor from Seattle. You had some of everybody out there. And it's a misnomer when people think that, oh, well, all Trump supporters are just, what do they call them? Non-college educated white males or something, you know, when they do this polling. This is literally half of America. I'm not saying, I want to be clear that half of America agrees with what happened there in Washington, D.C. That'd be very disingenuous. There's so many people on the right, Republicans, people who voted for Trump, people who didn't vote for Trump, but, you know, have a conservative ideology, who are just disgusted by what they saw. But what we need to be clear that it's a wide swath of people who feel this way about our country.
Absolutely. And this is why it's so important to have those tough discussions. You know, I'm trying to do it in my ways, right? Because talking to people, connecting with folks, and realizing that, you know, we really do need to heal together. That's really the goal here. I think so many of us, we stay kind of focused in our own bubbles, and it doesn't allow for us to have that genuine discussion across the aisle, the genuine understanding. But, you know, now really is the time for that. We saw these polarities just grow and grow and grow. And now look at where we are today. And so it really is up to all of us to do that work and to connect, even if we have to agree to disagree, but that we can connect in some level. You're absolutely right. I agree 100%.
Well, I'll be honest with you, Trey Holiday. And we hear this talk right now. And actually, this was a point for later in the show. But since you brought up healing, let's talk about that real quick, and we'll play some of these clips. We talk about this all the time, and especially things that impact us, is that politicians are very quick and diligent to treat the symptoms, but very rarely do they have the courage to cure the disease. And so when we're talking about healing, let's be clear that if it's just to put the Band-Aid back on here and let this heal right here, that's not healing. There's a disease that's afoot. And literally for hundreds of years here, we've found a way to kind of treat the symptom here and treat the symptom there, because as politicians and as people, we haven't had the courage to cure the disease.
Yeah, this is why, to me, when I look at two bills that are up this year, Truth and Reconciliations bill and the reparations bill, these are things that I really want to share with community in terms of educating them on these two bills. This is really a step in the right direction when you think about really healing the actual root cause of all of this. We do have to reconcile with our past. We do have to be truthful. We do need folks to actually wake up from the dream of what is the American dream to create a real reality out of that dream. It's been a dream for far too little people, and we really need to understand how we make it a dream for all people. And that's where it all comes into all of us to really do the work.
All right. So local stories. We talked about OPA and the SPD. Well, here's a clip from King 5. There's a local man that's been charged federally for trying to beat up a Capitol police officer.
We are seeing new video tonight of Trump supporters attacking police officers at the U.S. Capitol on Wednesday. Rioters here can be seen pulling an officer to the ground. Then they beat him, stomped on him, and hit him with a flagpole. And tonight, we've learned that a Seattle man is one of the people charged with federal crimes since that riot. Good evening. I'm Vanessa Mashania. Mark Leffingwell allegedly hit an officer in the helmet and chest when stopped by law enforcement after entering the Senate side of the Capitol. Leffingwell faces several charges, including knowingly entering or remaining in any restricted building or grounds without lawful authority, assault on a federal law enforcement officer, as well as violent entry and disorderly conduct on Capitol grounds. He was released on his own recognizance to his wife, meaning that he didn't have to pay money for bail.
Well, I think that's probably just the first story of many that we're probably going to get out of here, out of Washington, D.C. with local people. You see these guys beating that cop with the flagpole? They was beating the cop with an American flag. Own
recognizance, ROR?
Yeah.
Really? Yeah. For a federal crime? I am appalled, bro. I'll be honest. Like that, I just now saw that clip. Omari knows. Like it's something you guys get my real reactions because I'm just like, what? Again, you guys just listen and learn from this, man. Real racism is playing out before our eyes. White supremacy, white privilege. You're going to hear me say that time and time again when these charges come out. We were asking before if they were even going to be charged. For him to get released like that, I'll be honest, it's already playing out in certain ways because I'll tell you what, there is plenty of protesters that were right there in the chop that did not get ROR. Let me just put that out there and make that very clear. There were some that did, but there were many that had to spend days in jail and waiting to figure out what to do. People scrambling to try to get bail money, actual bail money. So this right here is just the system working the way it's set up, yo.
Well, this is the system. What they're saying is one, COVID, and so that's why they didn't hold over. The magistrate didn't hold over. But that's one thing that's being held, but no bail. And what they're saying is that this is a tactic by the federal prosecutors there. They're getting people on a lot of lower charges as they build a bigger case. And so they're charging people, they're releasing them right now with the idea of coming back later. But we see it also. I mean, this clip's about a minute long. I want to warn people, it's very disturbing, but this is a shot down there, what happened in one of the hallways there at the Capitol. And we actually see here that these rioters are crushing an officer in the door. kind of amazing there how fast they went from back to blue to F the police to beating the police.
I mean, my gosh, you know what? That is disturbing, to be honest. And, you know, we saw, I think, a lot of stuff play out Wednesday, but as we're seeing more and more footage come in, it's just really showcasing the heightened chaos that was really there on the ground, the heightened sense of violence. And you can't deny, again, when something is playing out before your eyes, when you get it captured on video. We saw it in the live streams right here in the chop. It's the same right there. This stuff is playing out before our eyes, though. A real coup, a real coup.
Well, you know, the thing is, of course, I spent half of my career living overseas in between the Middle East and East Africa. And I talked to all my friends, and believe me, we witnessed quite a few things there on the continent. And for sure, if this was any other country, if we were looking at Tanzania, if we were looking at Turkey, a lot of other countries, if people stormed the Capitol, it would 100%, we'd be saying there's an attempted coup attempt. You see, and it's crazy because the rest of the world, they look at it as like, what's going on? I mean, if this was anything else that we as a country would be looking at, and that's exactly what we'd be saying, is when people try to take over one of the seats of power, that's what they call a coup.
Yeah, literally one of the things that I saw through social media, I can't remember the account, was the term Ku Klux Klan. And I thought, man, now I don't know, that's for me just really hit the nail on the head. We're seeing it again, white supremacy, white privilege, as all these reports are coming out about the complacency of the Capitol Police. Well, that's another piece of this.
So that's interesting that you bring that up. Our next thing right here is actually the chief, the former chief who resigned. He said that backup was denied, and they got him on calls where he's pleading with the Department of Defense. And they kept saying that the optics didn't look good for the National Guard to be lined up around the Capitol. And so a lot of the delay to get the resources there for the Capitol Police, and then you can find this here in the Seattle Times, originally published in the Washington Post, but backup was denied, former police chief says. And when you go through there, he talked to everybody. The sergeant at arms who could have instantly approved everything. The sergeants at arms were like, hey, we need to talk to our leadership first. And this chief here, you know, who clearly he resigned, but he told it. And in the article, he breaks down how he was calling people, and the Department of Defense, you know, they wanted to get the guard out there, and they were like, the optics of it wouldn't look good if they had all these soldiers out there on the Capitol. So when we talk about, so he's saying basically the chief there, the former chief of the Capitol Police, is basically saying that like his superiors, everybody above him, you know, they threw him under the bus, which in turn threw the Capitol Police and everything else under the bus. All for optics. Yeah,
you know, this is exactly why people are able to have interviews with former Capitol Police. I saw one with a Black police officer who was Capitol Police for over 30 years and had so much rich history to say exactly what we're saying here, that, you know, this was really a job of complacency. Like he said, no, there's no way. There's so many measures that normally get put in place. He gave a really great example of how Louis Farrakhan showed up at the Capitol with 4 other people and had way more security out there than what we just saw. So this thing about optics, again, it goes back into how certain people are protecting that sense of privilege and protecting certain things that really don't apply to all, period.
All right. Got a few more things to cover here, and then we're going to take a break. We'll be back with Lance Randall. I can tell you right now, man, this brother is looking sharp this morning. So down in Olympia, that isn't the only place where the guard, Washington, D.C. is the only place where the guard is deployed. Down in Olympia, the National Guard is deployed down there. And it's crazy. We saw, though, the last few weeks, you saw that, you know, a few weeks ago, somebody stabbed. A few other weeks ago, somebody shot. Last weekend, they ran up over there in Inslee in the mansion. And so today there's a big ring fence around the actual Capitol building. The National Guard is down there, as well as Washington State Patrol Field Unit. We know about that field unit. And they're prepared. But the turnout, there was supposed to be a big protest there today, which actually the organizers canceled after what happened in Washington, D.C. And what they were going to do was enter the Capitol. They were like, yo, man, this is people's capital. We should be able to enter it. Of course, the Capitol is closed because of COVID, amongst other reasons. But that's the main reason they're saying that the Capitol is closed to the public because of COVID. And so the big protest didn't occur, but there's still people that are down there. Bobby Steele is monitoring the stream. We'll see what happens. But yeah, it's even in Olympia, it's a lot of state capitals across the country now that are actually under National Guard protection.
Yeah, I mean, when you see what just played out last week at the national capital, we knew that it was going to begin to play out and splinter off into all of the states and specifically those that already have this kind of camaraderie and gathering around, hey, we want to be able to disrupt the process, or we want to be able to showcase, our position and our stance. So honestly, it's a good thing that they have that protection. We knew it was coming.
Right. And so tomorrow night at 6 p.m., we see, I thought that was the overlay, but yeah, so tomorrow, 6 p.m., we got a special edition of Writer's Block. Writer's Block's where we gather a bunch of journalists and get their thoughts on things. So you've got Mike Davis from the South Seattle Emerald, Liz Brazil from KUOW, Melissa Hellman from the Seattle Times, Naomi Ishisaka from the Seattle Times, and also Julia Jesse from Converge Media. So that's 6 p.m. tomorrow, 6 to 8 p.m. Right here. It should be a very interesting discussion on this edition of Writer's Block.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a hot topic. And to be able to hear how journalists really see this playing out in their writings and how they're able to really report back for the greater Seattle, greater communities. I mean, that's important. I'm glad that you put that together because honestly, Converge is really doing the work that so many cannot. And that's one of those things, to bring that amazing variety of voices together. So great special coming up tomorrow. Y'all stay tuned for that.
Yep. And before we go to break here, one last thing I want to make our viewing public aware, viewing audience, is that we have a special airing Thursday at 8 p.m. after Clapback Culture. And the focus is really on suicide in the Black community. And you sat down with Ashley McGirt last week. And then I also talked to the prosecutor's office with the extreme protection order unit, so everything else. And we're talking about suicide, signs of suicide, and what family members can do and resources that are out there. And this is just a real short clip of you and Ashley.
Suicides actually don't get talked about enough in the Black community. And so I really want to start off with your expertise with regard to suicide, your background, and why you're actually one of our experts in this regard.
Yeah, so my master's research was actually on African American suicide, and it's important to really acknowledge that suicide is the third leading cause of death for African American male youth, and we don't talk about it.
So yeah, we're definitely going to talk about it. And so that's going to be this Thursday at 8 p.m. Discussion about suicide in general, how COVID's impacted, but especially in our community.
Absolutely. It was great to sit down with Ashley. She brings a lot of expertise, and ultimately it's great to start talking about the things that are really needed in our community that go untalked about. It's not part of general discourse. Normally, a lot of people suffer, internally. So I'm really glad that we're having that talk and that we're able to share that information, resources, and everything with the community.
All right. We're going to take a short break. And when we come back, we have Lance Randall, mayoral candidate for the city of Seattle. You're watching the Morning Update Show.
My parents coming over here as refugees meant that they didn't really have anything when they came to America. Having reliable healthcare and having a reliable doctor was really important. Cộng đồng của tôi, trạm y tế của tôi.
我的社区，我的诊所。Mi comunidad, mi clínica.
بلشدة هي بقارها.
My community, my clinic.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's your man, the Big O. Want to take a moment here, first of all, to say thank you for your support of Converge Media. We definitely wouldn't be here without you. Secondly, I want to thank everybody who is a supporter of Converge Media on Patreon. We definitely appreciate your support. And for those of you might not know, I'll let you know, we operate 100% off of donations. Some donations big, most donations small, but we love all donations all the same. If you haven't done so yet, I want to encourage you to go on our website to whereweconverge.com/donate and subscribe. You click on the Patreon link and you can subscribe for as little as $5 a month. There's higher tiers beyond that as well. And just know that your subscription literally keeps us on the air. Once again, I want to thank you for all your support. All right, welcome back to the Morning Update Show. Now, going to our interview here with Lance Randall, and what we're going to do, because we have a very COVID-safe studio here, is I'm going to do a set of questions, and then we're going to break, and then my colleague Trayana Holiday is going to hop in with some questions as well. That being said, Lance Randall, welcome to the Morning Update Show.
Thank you, Mari. It's an honor to be here with you, my brother.
Yeah, tell everybody you're looking sharp, man.
Well, I know I was coming to be on your show, and I wanted to make sure I looked appropriate.
All right. Well, let's get into it. Got a bunch of questions for you, but first of all, you filed to run for mayor last year. I think you
actually filed in February.
So
yeah.
Earlier this year.
Yeah, February last year. Actually, when Matt Durkin filed, I filed at the same time.
Okay, so you filed. It's going on almost a year ago.
That's correct.
All right. So what was the impetus a year ago for you to want to run for mayor?
Well, just like a lot of people in the city, I've been very disappointed with some of the things I've seen happen around the city.
What are you disappointed with?
Well, I'm very disappointed with the fact that we had these protests, and we're not giving enough credit to the people who protest and the fact that they brought a very serious issue to the stage, and the way that they were treated, the way that people tried to make this out to be something else, but this was a peaceful protest designed to bring attention to the fact that we're tired of people of color, Black people, mainly African-American men like myself, being killed, unarmed, being killed. And we stepped up and said, we have to send a clear message that this has to stop. And I was very disappointed of how the violence erupted, where you had some bad players that just showed up out of nowhere, infiltrated the protests. And it just bothered me. That's one thing. The other thing is that I'm concerned about some of the things that are going on in our economy. The pandemic has really wreaked havoc on our economy, and we're going to have to figure out how to bring our economy back from the pandemic.
What are some of the things we can do?
Well, some of the things we can do is, first of all, we have to continue to keep ourselves safe, practice social distancing, wearing our mask, and also when the opportunity comes, we need to consider taking the vaccine to make sure that we are immune from this disease, but just continue to do the things that we need to do to keep ourselves safe and keep each other safe from the pandemic. The next thing we have to do is we have to take a look at our small businesses and the struggles that they're having. I know right now it's still a shutdown, where the governor says that we cannot, cater to our small businesses the way that we would like to. And I think that when the opportunity comes where the economy opens up, we need to go full force as much as we can to cater to these businesses, to begin to help them to revive their businesses again. A lot of them have lost a lot of money. They've lost employees. Some businesses have shut down. And what we're going to have to do as a city is make sure that we do what we can to support our smaller businesses in the neighborhood districts so that they can begin to thrive again, because that's where it's got to start as far as the economic recovery with our small businesses.
Right. And so, well, Mayor Durkin's not running for re-election. Clearly, at the time that you filed, I think everybody thought that was the intention, that she would be. But there's also an argument out there that the city is actually doing a lot for COVID. So where would you come in on top of that? I mean, we talk about it, at least in our community, a marginalized population. The city sent out food vouchers. They did Fresh Bucks. They've halted utilities. They've opened up all kinds of services. They've tried to put out small business grants. Are these things that like you see yourself continuing and trying to add on to? Because it isn't like when you compare Seattle to a lot of other cities in America, the way that they responded, especially to poor people and small businesses, they're well ahead of a lot of other cities.
Well, I think we're doing the things that we need to do to try to keep people safe and try to help, residents as well as businesses maintain as we go through this chaos or this pandemic. But I think what we have to start to do is preparing for what's to come next. And I think we have an opportunity because everyone has pretty much been put in a situation where economically they've been damaged. So now we're going to have to come out. And in coming out, I think that we have to make sure that everyone is getting the same opportunity to come out, which means that as we begin to figure out how to support our local businesses, our small businesses, we need to make sure that there's not two set of rules that applies to certain businesses, which means that everyone should have the same opportunity to be able to get access to financial resources, is what I'm speaking about. Financial resources, they're going to be needed to help businesses recover. And I want to make sure that when this happens, that the communities of color, Black businesses, brown businesses are not given the short end of the stick, because that happens a lot when it's time to start dishing out money. It tends to be that the biggest amount goes to the white community, but then when it comes to communities of color, we have to get what's left. I think that's not fair. I think we need to make sure that whatever we do as far as recovery, that it's going to be equitable. And I mean, truly equitable to mean that the financial resources that need to be made available for small businesses in our neighborhoods is sufficient and not just something to try to just do something to put a band on the issue. I think we have to make sure it's equitable. Right.
A few months ago, Mayor Durkin appointed Pamela Banks as a director of recovery for the city of Seattle. It's a cabinet level position, director of recovery from COVID. If you were elected mayor, would you have Pamela Banks continue in that position as director of recovery?
Well, Pam has a very good reputation in working with communities of color and small businesses from her work at the Urban League and also when she worked with the city. She's excellent with outreach. She's excellent in understanding the needs of communities. So I would say, yes, I think that we need to keep Pam, and I would be inclined to keep Pam on board because it's going to be important we have someone with her expertise and her skills to make sure that the communities of color have access to the resources that I'm talking about.
Right. What we've seen in the Durkin administration, at least almost going on the last year where we've kind of been covering it, is we have seen some investments in affordable housing, especially in the Black community and different communities as well, and also investment in housing for the chronic homeless. So it was a round of funding. Last year, this time, Africatown Plaza was one of the recipients there. This year, First AME Church, as well as Mount Zion, in their programs, they received funding. What would you do as far as working with this Office of Housing, where I think everybody wants more housing, but the Office of Housing does get a lot of kudos for their continued investment in housing, not only for Black people, but for all different kinds of categories of people here in affordable sense. What would you do to ramp up the Office of Housing, Emily Alvarado over there?
Well, I think we need to continue what we're doing as far as making the necessary investments in affordable housing. But I also believe that there's an opportunity where in communities of color, where a lot of the affordable housing is being built, there are a lot of people who own property. And I think that when you take a look at some of the housing policies, and they need to be more inclusive. And what I mean by that, there's one thing to build massive structures with hundreds of units of housing. But what about the opportunity for people who own their property, people of color, to be able to do some development of themselves to provide housing? Because I do know that we look at it from a larger scale, hundreds of units. But if you were to take a lot of different units with a lot of different people who own property and allow them the opportunity to also be a part of the process, then we not only are providing additional affordable housing, not so much on a bigger scale, but even on a smaller scale, but we're also allowing those individuals, people of color, to also be able to make some money in the process, because there is money being made when people are doing these developments. And I think that the policies are not very inclusive to make sure that people of color who own property have an opportunity to be their own developers so that they can also build affordable housing in their neighborhoods. So I would like to figure out a way to get some of that funding to these property owners in communities of color where they can also be the developers and build some affordable housing within the community themselves, and also take advantage of opportunity to build some wealth.
Right. And I know that one issue that especially our elders are facing is they're getting taxed out. And so tax policies need to be looked at as well. What is it that makes you qualify to run for mayor? This is a city of over 700,000 people. When you look at the office of mayor, there's 11,000 employees. There's over 35 different departments. So even beyond the politicized issue, just the everyday management of this organization of the city, what makes you qualified to have the position of mayor?
Well, one thing that we're going to need going forward is a mayor with a unique set of credentials. One, I'm an economic development practitioner. I've been doing that for 25 years. And that's going to be very important to bring our economy back, which means that we're going to have to do some very strategic things all over the city to make sure that we can bring our economy back after going through the challenges of this pandemic. The second thing is that I have a wealth of experience in the political arena. I've worked for a U.S. congressman. And you talk about 783 people in the city of Seattle. When I worked for a congressman, we had to represent a district of 522,000 people. And I was the director of constituent services, and I had a staff of only 20. But our responsibility was to respond to all the complaints, concerns, and issues of all of those constituents on behalf of Sanford Bishop, who was a U.S. congressman from Georgia. So that took a lot of management of people, and it took a lot of relationship building and being able to put forth strategies of how do you serve that many people at one time. I have experience in doing that. I've also worked for for state senator, which means that I understand how the municipal government has to have a relationship with the state government to get some things done. You have to make sure that that relationship is strong so you can get resources and other things that you need for that municipality, because we're all competing. So we have to have that strong relationship. And I've also worked for 3 mayors back in Macon, Georgia, where I'm originally from. Had the opportunity to work within municipal government, within the mayor's office, interacting with council members on a regular basis. And I understand how a municipal government is supposed to operate with the mayor and a council that's set up by districts, and some of the unique things that I've seen mayors do to build those relationships and be successful. So I'm bringing a unique skill set to the city of Seattle that I think is going to be needed as we begin to go forward and come out of this situation. Another thing that makes me uniquely qualified is I've been on the ground working in different neighborhoods all over the city. When I was in the Office of Economic Development, my job was to try to recruit businesses to the city of Seattle, and I had to pull teams of people together to attract companies from all over the world to agree that they want to set up operations in Seattle. But I also had to work very hard doing business retention and expansion work. And what that is going out proactively visiting with businesses all over the city to solve problems, to make sure that they can continue to operate, and to make sure that we're providing the services they need as a municipality so they can be successful. And in doing that, I had a chance to work with all 35 of the business associations, the small chambers of commerces that are around the city, community groups, nonprofit organizations, work with them on the ground all over the city, addressing issues that are important to keep the community strong and connected, and also keep the small businesses thriving. So you have a candidate that has a wealth of experience politically, from an economic development perspective, and from a local perspective. I've been on the ground doing a lot of work to help communities all over the city. And I think that skill set is what's needed in the mayor to make sure that as we get out of this situation, which we've never gone through before, to make sure that we can get out of this situation together in a unified fashion. And I have that reputation of building teams and managing teams to be able to do that.
Now, just 1 or 2 more questions. I know Trey has a lot of questions, especially on community is over there. But, Seattle is a city where it's almost like business is a bad word in some context. How do you plan to be able to really rely heavily on your background, what you said is economic development, in a sense, with small business, where we've got an atmosphere here a lot of times it's anti-big business. We hear that all the time. And, you know, in some of the comments, even coming onto the show, people are like, well, is Lance Randall, is he a front man for big business? Is he, you know, is he the big business candidate and things like that? There's a gap that's there between people who are just very supportive of small business and a lot of times dislike intensely big business.
Well, here's the thing that we have to understand is just because I know business doesn't make me a so-called business candidate. I'm not even sure what that means, but I will say that I have worked to help big businesses in the city deal with any problems that they've had and solve those problems. And I've helped small businesses all over the city help resolve issues. So I would say I'm a candidate that knows business and how to help businesses solve problems. And I think when you look at economic development, there's this basic principle is that larger corporations and small businesses actually have a unique relationship because of the constituency that they serve. The large corporations need the small businesses because of the quality of life factor. You can bring someone into Seattle. They can be at a large corporation, make $100,000 or more, $150,000 or more. But if the quality of life is not in place, and when I mean that, if they can't find a place to get their hair cut, their dry cleaning done, if they can't get the type of ethnic food that they would like, if they can't get dry cleaning, the quality of life factor is not there. The small businesses is what provides that quality of life factor. Now, on the other end, the small businesses need the corporations because of the people that they hire that spend money. And that's an opportunity to get people to come to the business neighborhoods and spend money on those quality of life things I've talked about, eating at restaurants, dry cleaning, all these different things. So typically what happens in a strong economy, the larger corporations make investments or have a strong network with the smaller businesses to make sure that they are strong because of their quality of life. And then it helps the small businesses grow. But that's not right or left. That's just businesses supporting businesses and networking. And I think that if we create a situation where the larger corporations make direct investments, actually support and create a network, a direct network with the small businesses, I think that we can help the small businesses grow. And then we can let them begin to help to cultivate and deal with this separation issue. I give you a great example that there's a small Black-owned business called Lanier's Fine Candies, small company down in Rainier Beach where I live. And when I was doing my outreach a couple of years ago, I reached out to this company, and he said, I'm a home business, but I would like to talk to you. I went to see him. Had a great operation. He's converted his basement into a commercial kitchen. And I said, how can I help you? He said, I don't need any money. I got everything in place. He says, what I want to do is I want to meet with George Bartell at Bartell Drugs to see if I get my candy in his business. Now, I did some work for George Bartell and Bartell Drugs at their headquarters where they had a flooding issue. And I was able to get SDOT to work with me to get that fixed. And because of that, I was able to call George Bartell and say, I have a Black-owned company that makes brittle candy that would like to meet you because they want to see about an opportunity in getting the candy in your stores. He responded, yes, I would love to meet him. They met, they shared information, and this company is doing very well. All I did was I helped a large business, create a relationship, had a smaller business, Black-owned business, create a relationship, and I connected them. And they have they created this network where they helped one another. This can happen all over the city where businesses can get help directly from larger corporations. But it's kind of hard when the narrative is that big businesses are trying to destroy things. But I think that's not always the case. I think that we have to figure out a way to bring these bigger businesses together, especially in communities that need assistance the most, so they can help build wealth within that community. But I'm not talking about they do it. help the businesses be able to do it themselves to be sustainable. And this company is doing excellent. I talk to him all the time, Lanier's Fine Candies, and he's doing excellent. He has so many contracts. The website is kicking. And just the fact that he's getting that exposure, he's in PCC. He's all over the place with this small business. I want to be able to create that type of situation where I can help build wealth in these communities and get the large corporations to help with that direct infusion of cash and support to these small businesses.
All right, now you heard of the nearest. We don't have to go get that nearest candy. We're going to take a short break right now. My colleague, Treyana Holiday, is going to have Lance Randall here on the hot seat. You are watching the Morning Update Show.
I did it for the city, I did it for the love, I did it for the people, I did it for us. Back on this rap ish, I ain't even broke a sweat, homie, this practice. Pondering my next move, staring at my track list, hope I ain't miss my window. Praying like a Baptist, Seattle's own, tired of this Game of Thrones. They made a list of the best rappers and guess who wasn't on? While the disrespect continues, I'm steady packing these venues.
Welcome back to the Morning Update Show, everybody. I am your co-host, Trey Holiday, and joining me now is Mr. Lance Randall, the mayoral candidate for the city of Seattle. I want to pick right up where you and Omari kind of left off, as you were just giving a great example about this Black-owned business and the candies going into Bartell's and now other places. With regard to your connectivity to community and those businesses that really are on the ground, how do you anticipate really expanding that knowledge with who is on the ground, who has got businesses, who has products, who has services, and to connect them with these larger supply chains?
Yeah, well, the key is this. We have to do a better job at marketing these communities and these businesses. And one thing that I would like to do is I want to work directly with the Seattle Convention and Visitors Bureau, because a lot of people do come to Seattle and they are responsible for marketing the city. I want to make sure that in their marketing, that they are being very specific in marketing these communities and these businesses of color to let people know who are coming here, where they are and what they have. Because granted, people do come to downtown, but at some point they want to venture out. And I think that I want to invest money into that neighborhood marketing with the focus on Black-owned, brown-owned, all types of minority businesses, to let people know that we're here and that we have good products and that we really contribute a lot to the economy of Seattle.
Well, there's certain, I think, hubs that also are really doing this work. You know, I think about Black Dot, doing this work in terms of Mastermind Mondays. They've been, gathering folks. Sorry, there's all kind of things over here. Gathering folks and business owners to really get them started. I think about Ventures, kind of the same thing, going through that, course I went through, and it was called Washington Cash, and, being connected to Pike Place Market. But how do you connect with those hubs that are also doing the work? Because I think sometimes it's not just about the individual business owners. It's also about going through certain organizations that already have these measures in place.
Well, again, this goes back to the marketing piece. I think those organizations that you talked about have done a great job in making sure that the businesses understand the business plans, the financing, what have you. But what I know for a fact, the one thing that Black businesses, minority businesses need more than ever is the marketing. It makes no difference No difference how good your business is, the products that you offer, but if no one knows you exist, you're not going to get the customers that you need. And when you have a smaller business, it's hard to put that a significant amount of money into the marketing. So that's where we have to step up as a municipality, as a city, to create a situation where we are marketing our businesses. And that means making those investments into those organizations to now, after they've helped them with understanding how to run the business and get it going, now they should be able to invest money into help marketing these particular businesses. Because the company that I mentioned, Herman Lanier, went through the ventures. He went through the ventures program. And again, when I told you that he needed a connection, that tells me that he's now looking for marketing. Great product, great packaging, great everything. He's done videos, he's worked with, but he still needs to get that extra push to get to the bigger piece of the pie through that marketing. So the marketing is a very important part that we have to put in place. And I'm willing to make significant investments to make sure people know that we have good, strong minority businesses here that provide great products and service and food. And we want people from all walks of life to cater to them.
Well, I think you've answered a lot of great business questions. I'm going to pivot a little bit into community. As we've seen right here in the CHOP, there was an explosion of community folks getting out, utilizing their voice against a lot of the disparities, a lot of the brutality, a lot of things that we've seen that really were centered around police because of George Floyd's death, but also expanded beyond that, just in terms of the lived experience of Black Americans in this city, and with regard to things like gentrification, redlining, how we actually begin to change the narratives of these disparities. And I want to ask you, as a mayoral candidate, what are your thoughts with regard to, how you can actually bring about some closure there and move things forward with regard to closing these gaps?
Well, I think that what we have to do, and what I'm willing to do, is this. When we say we're going to do certain things for the community, they have to be real things that are going to be long term. Now, I don't criticize public officials because I come from a family of public officials, and it's a very tough job. But the one thing that when I heard Mayor Durkin said in response was I'm going to invest $100 million into Black and brown communities. To do what? What are you going to address? And then you say it's $100 million, which is it's an ending number. It's $100 million. So what happens after that? Over a 10-year period, what happens after 10 years? The oppression, the mistreatment of people of color, mainly Black people in this country, goes back way longer than 10 years. And there's not a price tag that you can put on the things that have happened to this community. So to say $100 million of 10 years as though that's going to solve a problem or help, no. The commitments started in my office will be commitments that I want to put in place going forward, even when I'm gone. I want to set forth a position of equity where at no given time will the communities of minority communities would not feel that they are not included in the budget process. People like to say, well, we need to make sure their voices are heard. What good is the community's voice being heard if that voice cannot give a command to make something happen? Then they say, well, they need to be sitting around the table. What good is it sitting around the table that when they start passing the food out in the plates, you don't get one? So my objective is to make sure that everything that I do, everything's going to be inclusive and equitable, and it's going to stick to it. It's not going to be in negotiations. It's going in the budget because people of color pay taxes just like everybody else, and they deserve to get some of their money coming back to their community. And I'm talking about significant dollars. I'm not talking about peanuts, because it's all about helping these communities build wealth within the community, as opposed to people always coming to the community, building buildings, making these investments, and they're the ones benefiting. We need to be able to put these communities in a position where they can get the resources they need and then be able to build their community, build their own businesses, purchase commercial property, build their own affordable housing, build the community centers. A lot of things they need to be able to do. We just have to give them the resources so they can make those investments and turn them over and over and over again. And I'm going to step up and make sure that happens.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of folks that in the community, in my purview, Seattle has a unique dynamic here with regard to the ecosystem of organizations that are Black-led, Brown-led, that are really working together hand in hand, arm in arm, to really elevate the people power and the voice of the people. So when we talk about that voice being heard, I like what you were saying in terms of the longevity of that voice and it actually bringing in some actual wins to the community, because I think that's really important. But because we have this unique situation, how will you as mayor really work to enforce those kinds of ecosystems as folks do come together and figure out ways to build their communities? I think so many people in community go, hey, give us the resources and get out of the way. And I want to ask you as a mayoral candidate, how would you actually anticipate allowing those community groups to have that sense of agency to do exactly what you just described?
Well, there's another important piece that has to happen with the resources. And this is very important. We have to begin to be more strategic and put plans together exactly how we're going to do things. I think a lot of times when people throw the money at us and not talk to us first about some of the things that we need to have done, it causes confusion. And I think what we have to do is invest in some assistance, training, what have you, so we can sit down and understand how we can put together a strategy to address the things that we want to have addressed in our community. And then we can put numbers to that. Then we can put the organizations to be different people responsible for doing certain things. So now we have a plan, we have the resources, we know exactly what we're going to do. Now let's put the dollar figure on it. And the dollar figure doesn't have to be all at one time, but it needs to be something that's continuous. Not 10 years, not a definite amount of number. It needs to be a commitment that every year the budget is going to allocate money to make sure that communities are able to build themselves from within and build their wealth so they can be sustainable. So my commitment is to make sure, and it's about dollars, to make sure that in the budget I have specific goals and time and line items to make sure that this money is going to the right place for the right reason with the right results. And that means making sure that the community has a plan, a concrete plan of how we're going to do this and how we're going to sustain it. And that's how you do it. I mean, it's been done all of those, Sweet Auburn in Georgia, Black Wall Street. They started with what we needed and a plan, and then they put it together. We can do it again here, especially now the things that they had to deal with back then today. Now we were still dealing with some stuff here, but the opportunities are great. It's just a matter of now really capitalizing it and just moving forward, full speed ahead in unity, understanding, and in a strategic approach.
Well, I think that folks in community have heard not the same, but similar. And some of the things that we actually deal with is the gatekeeping that is particularly in the Black community. I don't know if I don't want to say intergenerational, because I think there's a lot of my elders that get it. And then there's some that just seem like, hey, no, that's not the way to do it. I want to ask you, because you are a Black man, how do you really want to deal with what a lot of folks in community, a lot of community members have felt was really the gatekeeping, that this happens, but then it happens in this level, like up here, and the people down here are not actually a part of that process. How do you anticipate ensuring that that's not the case?
Well, I appreciate my ancestors and I honor them for what they've done, but things evolve. And I think what we have to do is to continue to encourage the young people who are stepping up, to give them opportunity to step in to some leadership positions, and we need to encourage them and push them along the way. But we cannot continue to hold on power from a symbolic perspective. It's fine to be the first whatever, the first elected or the first whatever, but at some point you have to begin to look at who's second, who's third, who's next. How do we continue this? So I think that this is where we have to begin to encourage and get our young people more involved in serious situations. For example, when I had interns, I actually put them in key positions when I was with the congressman. They thought they were going to be pushing paper, making copies. I say, no. If a problem comes in, that's your case. And it's your responsibility to make contact with someone with the federal government to get it done. You stick with it. You ask whatever questions, you empowered to do that. And I think that's what we have to do with our young people in our communities. Empower them, encourage them, and say, you are going to have to step in to carry this mantle. I will push you and encourage you, but I want you to do the work. And a lot of times what we do is we want to preach at them. We want to say what you shouldn't do, what you should do. But I think that our young people are smart enough that if they're given the opportunity, give them a task, they will figure it out. But it has to be something meaningful that's going to have a strong impact on the community. So my deal is I want to encourage as many young people when I'm mayor to apply for positions, and we're going to give as many of them opportunities as we can to get started on that track, to be able to prepare to step in some critical positions down the road. A very strong internship program. I mean, a program where you're going to come in and really do some hands-on work in departments. And I'm going to encourage even the private sector to create opportunities for people of color to come in and get the chance to do it. We have some of the best and brightest people, and it's evident by young people, young African-American people who were the ones that are responsible for the greatest movement the world has ever seen under Black Lives Matter. So if we can do that, imagine what else we can do. It's just a matter of me stepping away one day and say, hey, I need you to be the mayor now. And I'm going to be preparing people to step in key positions in the community.
I think that's really important. And it kind of goes back to, this idea of reform, right? Reform is such a hot button word right now. It's a hot button issue. When we think about the police and their contract, that's kind of up for, some negotiation now. I want to ask you particularly how you actually see that playing out and what you can do as mayor to ensure that a lot of the kind of discourse that's out there about the mistrust of police, police brutality, when we think about the disparities with regard to racial discrimination, particularly in the Seattle Police Department. How do you as mayor really want to address that?
Well, since you're talking about the union contract negotiations, I think that we have to tie some dollar amounts to certain things that happens, this goes away. And it needs to be negotiated. If this happens, you're going to take a hit. One idea could be rather than the city having to pay for civil suits and paying people money for officers doing atrocities, maybe the union should be required to have some type of insurance policy, which means that part of the union dues that people pay has to go toward a policy, and they're going to have to pay this stuff. Why should the citizens have to pay for something that a bad officer does? So I think it's going to have to be some negotiation based on, okay, if this happens, this will be the response. And they're going to have to agree to that. They can't just say, if this happens, immunity. No, that doesn't happen anywhere else, and it shouldn't happen here. So let's negotiate. If an officer does something, this is the sanction that they're going to have to deal with. They're going to have to deal with it. And it has to be negotiated in the contract. The other thing too is I want to go after bad officers that are doing a terrible job. I'm talking about officers who have this mentality that because they're a law enforcement officer, they can treat people any kind of way and even kill them. First and foremost, I want to identify those officers and get them off of the force and keep officers like that from coming onto the force. We can talk about a lot of different things, but until we address that fundamental problem of bad officers on the force, and we do have some good officers on the force. Let me say this much. If you saw the video, what happened at the Capitol, it was one officer that we know visibly, he's becoming a household name, stood firm by himself, trying to protect the Senate, and even directed the mob down a different way to keep them from going to the actual doorway that would have led to the Senate. An African-American officer, a good officer doing his job. Those are the type of officers I want on the force. But the ones who opened the door, as alleged, they're identifying them. Those officers should never be allowed to be on the police force again. My strategy is I want those officers first. And we don't even talk about this. We don't even talk about supervisors. How is it that the guy that killed George Floyd had 18 complaints but some kind of way he was on the streets patrolling. His supervisor had to know about this. So why did you allow him to go out there? Supervisors, if you know that you have people that do this, you need to be held accountable too. So I believe in public safety. Public safety is very important because there are three important agencies that make up our public safety delivery system: law enforcement, fire department, and EMTs. They provide the public safety that we all need. But if one of those agencies is not functioning right, it upsets the entire public safety delivery system, which means that we are not safe. So we have to fix this particular agency. And I mean, we have to do it deliberate speed. And some things are not negotiable. Some things are just going to have to happen. And I think we're at a time now, thanks to technology, thanks to the movements that are going on, that the police union, police officers who are doing these bad things are going to have to start paying up for what they're doing, and they're going to have a strong reckoning with. And I'm willing to do that. I'm ready to do that. And that's part of the reason why I'm doing this, because I'm tired of seeing this happen. I've been harassed by police officers for no reason. And the one thing I also want to encourage more people of color to begin to step up. Isn't it wonderful to know that in state of Georgia, four of the largest counties have elected Black sheriffs? Isn't it amazing that my fellow alumni from Morgan State University is now in charge of the Capitol Police? I think that more of this needs to happen. We need to begin to get more people of color and bring diversity within this department. And I will say we missed out on an opportunity here in Seattle when we had a person of color, our beloved sister, Carmen Bess, who was an outstanding officer, period. And what happened to her? We missed an opportunity to have someone who had gone through the system to be in a position that could have been able to do some things, but unfortunately was not allowed to. And I think that's a stain on the city of Seattle. And somehow we have to fix that.
Well, I think that, a lot of what you are talking about also kind of highlights some of the polarity, honestly, that we're seeing in the city. And I really want to ask you, I mean, it's really about, people do look to the mayor to unite the city. And so what will you do? Because right now we have these growing disparities. We have folks really feeling, passionate on both sides. How will you as mayor really unite the people of Seattle?
Well, a mayor has to be the one that brings people together to have a discussion and then come out with a common thing that they're going to do. And that means you have to build these relationships. You have to build a relationship with the council members. You have to build relationships with outside organizations. You have to build a relationship with the public in general. And that takes some time to do that. But you have to constantly do it throughout your tenure, building relationships and getting people working together. And I think we're in a situation now where the factions are looking so much at what's different that they don't even see what's in common. So it's my goal to begin to bring to the surface the things that we have in common and bring us together in that regard so that we can work together and really take those things we have in common to make them accomplish the things that everybody needs to have. So building relationships, focus on things that's in common. That's what I'm willing to do. And I think there's a lot more that we have in common that we have that's different.
Yeah, that's a really strong point. My last question to you here is really coming specifically from so many that I hear in the Black community. We heard Mayor Durkin talk about a direct investment into Black communities, and later it became BIPOC communities. And I want to ask you, because of some of the things that you highlighted here today about the disparities, about the inherent policies and racist practices that have literally led to, such declines in wealth for Black families here in Seattle. Mm-hmm. How will you, as a Black mayor, really kind of atone for that and do direct actual investment to ensure that equity is happening, particularly and specifically for the Black community?
Well, simple. I'm making a commitment for an agenda of wealth building, economic development for the Black community. When I ran for mayor back in Macon, Georgia, I launched what I talked about in the campaign trail, the Black Male Initiative. And people tried to say that that was racist. I say it's not racist. I say because every time you turn around, we're throwing all these negative statistics out about young African-American men. And we're also throwing negative statistics out about the African-American community. So if we're going to continue to throw these negative statistics out, that means that we need to do something very specific for that particular part of our population. Very specific. And I think that the time now is to do that. We have not gotten any reparations. We don't have any casinos. I'm not sure where the Black community is in Seattle. It's scattered out. So it only makes sense that if we're trying to deal with these negative statistics and turn things around, that we have to have a very specific plan and make very specific investments into the Black community, specific for Black businesses, for Black households, for Black property owners. We have to have a very specific agenda for that. And I want everyone, I don't care who you are, what part of the city, I want everyone to buy into that agenda, because if you have a strong Black community, guess what? The entire city is strong. The entire city is strong. And I want to make sure that we're not missing out. As I said before, Black people pay taxes in the city just like everybody else. And they should be allowed to get a return on the investment of taxes directly back to them. It happens all over the place. And I'm going to commit to that. And I want to get others, and I'm talking about all over the city, to match what the city is going to do. We need investment not only from public sector, but from private sector. And I just gave you the example about Ms. Lanier. So yes, that's my commitment. I'm going to do that. And I want to get everybody involved, and we're going to begin to help our communities. People like to call them marginalized. They're not marginalized, they're majestic. We're filled with culture, art, music, family. The only thing we're missing is we're short of the wealth that we need to maintain ourselves. That's all we need. Once we get that, then we're right where we need to be. But we're still majestic. But let's just begin to build the wealth within our communities so that people can pass it along to their kids and children just like everybody else does.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Lance. Randall, you have a second here to talk directly into the camera and let folks know exactly what you are going to do if you win the mayoral seat right here in Seattle, Washington.
Okay. Well, my name is Lance Randall. I'm running from the mayor of Seattle, and I'm running because we are going through a very tough period in our city's history. You know, we're wondering how we're going to recover from the pandemic and bring our economy back. We're wondering how we're going to deal with the issue of public safety for everyone. And we're trying to figure out how we're going to make things better. I have a unique skill set, and I'm ready to lead the city of Seattle. I'm going to make sure that every community is involved in everything that we do. We're going to improve the relationship with the city council members. We're also going to make sure that the business communities, big and small, have a network where they're working together to keep the city strong. I'm ready to do this job. I'm prepared. So I'm asking you to consider my candidacy. If you want to know more about me, my website is www.lancerandall2021. You get more about my agenda. I think that the city is a wonderful city. And I think I have the type of leadership that is needed to take us forward as we go through these challenges. So I appreciate this opportunity to be with Brother Mari and Sister Trey, an opportunity to talk to you today. And you'll be hearing more about my candidacy in the future. And I hope you consider me as your candidate of choice to be the next mayor of Seattle.
Well, thank you, Mr. Randall. We really appreciate you being here today. You guys, we're going to take a short break. Thank you for sticking with us through this longer episode. We really appreciate it. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's your man, the Big O. Want to take a moment here, first of all, to say thank you for your support of Converge Media. We definitely wouldn't be here without you. Secondly, I want to thank everybody who is a supporter of Converge Media on Patreon. We definitely appreciate your support. And for those of you might not know, I'll let you know, we operate 100% off of donations. Some donations big, most donations small, but we love all donations all the same. If you haven't done so yet, I want to encourage you to go on our website, to whereweconverge.com/donate and subscribe. You click on the Patreon link and you can subscribe for as little as $5 a month. There's higher tiers beyond that as well. And just know that your subscription literally keeps us on the air. Once again, I want to thank you for all your support. Today, but Lance Randall came in talking about why he wants to run for mayor. I got so many more questions for him. I think we're gonna have to do a follow up because it's a lot of other questions, really citywide questions as well. Like the city is not spending nearly enough money on like things like bridge maintenance. I think it's supposed to spend like $34 million a year. They're only spending $6. But infrastructure is under maintained. Some of everything else. Infrastructure is not sexy. It's hard to convince people to put $30 million here or $40 million there annually. So I want to definitely get Lance Randall back and ask some drill down on some of those points. But I think today we got a pretty good read on who he is and where he's coming from.
Absolutely. And particularly for our audience, I think that we really stayed true to a lot of the things that we kind of hear out there and really ask the questions that I think really come from a lot of the folks that watch. So I'm glad. I think you did a good job. And I felt real official being over there in your spot. Oh.
So just a few programming notes that, like I said, tomorrow at 6 p.m., we got a special edition of the Writer's Block. And it's got Liz Brazil from KUOW, Melissa Hellman from the Seattle Times, Naomi Ishizaka from Seattle Times, and Mike Davis, crazy Mike, from South Seattle Emerald, Julia Jesse from Converge Media, and they're talking about the fallout from Washington, D.C. That's tomorrow at 6 p.m. That's going to be really dope. And, of course, Thursday at 8 p.m. after Clapback Culture is our special we did here on suicide prevention in the Black community. Any last words before we get out of here, Trey?
Man, it's Monday. We went long, y'all. Thanks for sticking with us, hearing more about Lance Randall. And, always, thank you guys for watching and supporting us.
All right. Until tomorrow at 11 a.m.
Peace.
Lift every voice and sing till earth in heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun.